everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Trans Stupid, where I take a look at the wonderful world of LGBTQIA+ news because stupidity is intersectional. Now, this week there's been quite a lot going on, so I'm only going to touch on 3 stories because these are the ones that I really want to talk about. So the first story I'm going to be commenting on involves Carlos Meza. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the Vox adpocalypse that has been going on as a result of Meza and Vox throwing a bit of a hissy fit because of mean things that Steve Crowder was saying about him on YouTube. Now, luckily, I haven't been impacted by the second adpocalypse. However, a friend of mine, Tailed Feature, did find his channel was demonetized. Please go over to and give him a subscribe. He needs all the support he can get right now. Now, for those who aren't fully in the know, just to briefly explain things, Meza lobbied YouTube to do something about the likes of Crowder, who were making what he considered homophobic comments about him. Now, the jokes were at the expense of him being gay. Quite a lot of the comments were what one could argue to be anti-gay, although Crowder is saying that he is a comedian, this is what he does. But the long story short, as a result of this, YouTube has decided to take further action against alternative voices on their platform, massively demonetizing many people, and I'm sure that's not going to be the end of it. But the action that they've taken is obviously not going to be enough, not for Meza, not for Vox, not for any of the crybullies out there. What they're wanting is for people to be silenced. It's not enough that people are losing monetization, they want them outright removed. And even then, I'm not convinced that that's going to be the end of it. You can never please these people. So despite making moves to demonetize Crowder and a lot of other people, it didn't please the so-called LGBT community, and specifically in San Francisco. San Francisco Pride considers excluding Google from Parade over homophobic harassment on YouTube. LGBTQ+ activists and former Google employees attended an overflowing San Francisco Pride Board meeting to lobby for the exclusion of Google from this year's Pride Parade and celebration. Google has faced media backlash after journalist Carlos Meza, who is gay, accused the company of enabling homophobic harassment on its YouTube video platform. Earlier this week, Meza, who produces the Vox video series Strike Through, opened up on Twitter about a year-long harassment campaign he's faced from right-wing YouTube star Steven Crowder. Meza says that Crowder, who has amassed over 3.8 million followers on YouTube, has called him a lipsy queer, a little queer, and a gay Mexican. Crowder sells t-shirts with the slogan "Socialism is for F-GS," which he's advertised on his YouTube channel. Meza reported it to YouTube, arguing it violated their terms of service. YouTube initially said they didn't, but then they backed down. As a result, Crowder and hundreds of other people found their channels completely demonetized. But that kind of action simply wasn't enough for Meza, and it wasn't enough for the San Francisco queer community either. At yesterday's Pride Board meeting, activists expressed concerns that allowing Google to participate in this year's festivities would be seen as an endorsement of YouTube's actions. This feels like a classic example of rainbow washing, said activist and former Google employee Tyler Brisaccia. Google gets a lot of press for being progressive, said another former employee. But even during Pride Month, this is how they behave? While the Pride Board does have the power to exclude organisations from Pride, it's never exercised it in the past. At this time, no decision has been made about Google's participation in the parade, but the Pride's board members said they intend to monitor the situation as it develops. However, as an update, they did clarify that Google had already registered as a contingent for the parade and they will remain a participant unless the Pride Board decides otherwise. The representative said, "We are monitoring this story as it develops, listening to the concerns of the community, and have raised these concerns with our contacts at Google." Now, this kind of story really annoys me. So, Meza isn't a journalist. Meza is an activist. Meza and Vox's aim with this whole debacle was not just to remove monetization from the likes of Crowder or voices they don't like, it's to actively shut them down. And what annoys me about this even more is that they do it in the name of LGBT people. In fact, Meza made a tweet talking about how Google is simply not doing enough for LGBT people. Well, I'm an LGBT person, and I could potentially be impacted by this. This is because my voice goes against what the general progressive narrative is, and specifically when it comes to trans issues. I'm someone who could easily just be looked at and saying, well, I'm actually a problematic person, and I could get caught up in this. And there's going to be a lot of LGBT YouTubers who are quite similar to me, who have similar attitudes, and they'll lose basically their livelihoods. I don't really make a lot of money on this channel, so losing monetization might not necessarily impact me in the same way, but it would make my videos much less easy to find online. But this also paints the idea that LGBT people have a fairly thin skin, that we can't take any kind of jokes at our expense. And when we have activists claiming that this is all being done in our name and that we need protection, it paints us as weak. It paints us as people who cannot really stand up for ourselves and actually, go with the flow, instead throwing hissy fits online because someone said something mean. People have said mean things about me in my comments, or on Twitter, or on various other places, but I'm not going to advocate for their voices to be removed. Unfortunately, that's what Meza is doing. He doesn't want these people on there, and someone like Crowder is just being used basically as a weapon to silence people. They can look at Crowder and look at what he's saying and be, well, he's saying these problematic things, and look at all these other people who are the same. We need to protect the queers. But no, I think that Meza is playing with fire, and he has been, because a lot of history channels have been deleted as a result of this push because they featured speeches by Adolf Hitler. Because Google's system is simply not clever enough to understand what context is. This problem is only going to get worse as time goes on. I think that if the San Francisco Pride Board do decide to exclude Google, I think it sends a pretty bad message about an inclusive event when you're painting an entire company as being problematic because they haven't bent to the whim of leftist activist. I do have my issues with Pride and the way it is, but this kind of lobbying is frankly ludicrous, and it doesn't really paint the people on the board in a good light either. But then they want purity, and if Google is banned for this, you will see other businesses do so until they start towing the line even more, which is especially interesting with the amount of companies in this Pride Month who have the rainbow flag somewhere in their logo. I mean, it's everywhere at the moment, but they will never do enough. No matter how much they bend the knee, these people will still scream that they're not doing enough. But enough about the adpocalypse. And now I want to discuss another story which actually happened on Tuesday when I uploaded the last video. It's one that I've really wanted to talk about over the last week. Radical feminist Julie Bindel claims physical attack by trans person. Radical feminist Julie Bindel claimed that she was physically attacked by a transgender woman after speaking at an event at Edinburgh University on Wednesday, June the 5th. Bindel wrote on Twitter, "I took part in a really brilliant event tonight at Edinburgh University speaking about women's sex-based rights. I was physically assaulted as I left the event for the airport. This kind of intimidation has to stop. The person that attacked me was a man." The person referred to is Kathy Brennan, a trans woman, misgendered as a man by Bindel, who claims she lost her shit, but she did not touch Bindel. Bindel later told the Scotsman that she was almost punched. Brennan said, "The truth of the matter is that I did not raise a fist. I attempted to push past security so I could speak face to face with a person who has caused great harm to trans people across this country." However, Rosa Friedman commented saying that a TRA violently attacked Julie as they left. She thanked security for keeping women safe, but followed up by saying, "To be clear, Bindel is fine. She was shaken but not physically hurt." And the latter thanks to the awesome security personnel from the university. Now, there are two sides to this story. As you've seen, Bindel is the one that's saying that she was assaulted, whereas Brennan is saying, well, I'm not going to use she because look at Brennan, wasn't actually going to assault Bindel at all. And this is all a big mistake. Now, I don't think the question here really should be, was this what Brennan's intent was? After all, Bindel was not physically harmed. There are two different stories that are going on. As much as I dislike Brennan, I can't say outright that they were going to do this. But rather, is Bindel right to actually worry about whether this was going to happen? And I think that Bindel is completely justified in thinking that Brennan was going to assault her. Now, I say this because Brennan has quite a history of actually advocating for violence against women that they disagree with. In fact, after the Get the L Out group took over the Pride Parade in London last year, Brennan actually made tweets going on about how people should assault TERFs. And these tweets got a lot of traction. A lot of people saw them. And it's something that Brennan doubled down on. So imagine you're Julie Bindel. Imagine seeing this person who has called for violence against people like you trying to push past a security guard shouting and swearing. Who wouldn't think that this person was going to attack them? There is no reason why Bindel should have thought, well, maybe this person just wants to have a nice friendly chat, because it's obvious that's not what Brennan wanted to do. Brennan only has themselves to blame in this. I do think that if Bindel genuinely does believe that she was going to be assaulted, and from some things like that does appear to be what she said, then I think she should report it to the police. But before I end this bit, I just want to comment on something which she said to The Guardian. Bindel told The Guardian she's regularly abused in this manner, and that she didn't intend to involve the police. But she then says, I know these people do not represent transsexual people who suffer daily discrimination and are appalled by this. Now, as a trans woman, you are often told about how horrible Bindel is and that, that she is this nasty piece of work. But I'm going to give her respect here. She is acknowledging that there is a difference between someone like me and someone like Brennan. And I think that's a very important thing to do. One of the really frustrating things that I'm seeing with the gender critical movement at the moment is more and more people are just blurring people like myself or people like the gender radicals as being one and the same. I've seen this with the likes of Posey Parker now. And it's starting to get quite tiresome. These people seem to be, last year they understood that there was a difference, but more and more we just seem to be getting constant things of you're men, you're misogynists, you will hate women, all of this kind of stuff, but no real acknowledgement that we are different. And Bindel making this statement, I think, actually does go quite a way, and ultimately, I think, opens up the possibility that there is going to be dialogue in the future. Maybe Bindel would actually be happy meeting with trans women like myself and discussing these things. So that gives me a bit of hope, and I just wanted to highlight that this is a particularly good comment, and I'm glad that she made it. Well, the last thing I'm going to talk about today involves quite an annoying trans activist, someone that not a single trans woman I know actually likes, someone who is basically the face of trans in the UK, and she lost yet another job. Guess who it is? Yes, it's Munro Bergdorf, as the NSPCC cut ties with the transgender activist. Trans activist Munro Bergdorf says she is unbelievably sad that the NSPCC has cut ties with her days after she revealed she was Childline's first LGBT plus campaigner. She said the charity was bowing down to pressure from a transphobic lobby. Her appointment had been criticised by some on Twitter, with Miss Bergdorf being described as a porn model and her appointment called inappropriate. The NSPCC has not explained exactly why it made the decision, but the BBC has been told that NSPCC trustees received transphobic letters after the appointment was announced on Wednesday. The NSPCC issued a statement on this, saying Munro Bergdorf has supported the most recent phase of Childline's campaign, which aims to support children with LGBTQ+ concerns. Munro has been referred to as a Childline ambassador. At no point has she been an ambassador for the charity. She will have no ongoing relationship with Childline or the NSPCC. The NSPCC does not support, endorse, or authorise any personal statements made by any celebrities which contribute to campaigns. Childline is available to children without condition to provide support wherever the nature of their concerns. Naturally, Munro ran with this in the way that you would expect, playing the victim card, saying that she had been fired because of transphobic hate. And a lot of people on Twitter were saying the same thing. Shame on you, take the pride flags out of your logo. You gave in to white nationalists and anti-trans bigots who harassed her and lied about her, and so on and so forth. Now, this isn't the first position that Munro has lost. Remember when she was a representative for L'Oreal, only to get sacked a few days later for the wonderful comments that she made about white people? Or when she quit her role with Labour because, well, she's toxic, and it came back to bite her in the arse. And yet again, the same thing is happening. Now, I secretly think Munro loves it when this happens. She doesn't stay in these kinds of roles for very long. She knows this is something which is going to happen at this point. And she doesn't really do a lot, does she? She's a glamour model occasionally, but she comes from a rich background. She's incredibly privileged, makes lots of inappropriate comments, whether it's against women, whether it's against white people, whether it's against lesbians. The comments that she's made have been quite well documented. Now, I'm not saying that Munro deserves to be no platformed or anything like that. As you know, I'm very much pro-free speech. But Munro is not a particularly good representative for LGBT people. These kinds of comments about race, about sex, they aren't the best. Now, I've heard that Munro could have been sacked because of, well, what's been called porn work, which Munro is denied having ever done porn. I have heard of other sources that Munro has done porn, but I can't actually find any evidence of this online. So I'm just going to have to take her for a word on that. Now, she has done glamour modelling, as I mentioned earlier, but I don't think that would be the reason why NSPCC got rid of her, because they've had former glamour models in the past, like Melinda Messenger. It would be a double standard if they were to sack Munro when they've happily had these kinds of people work with them in the past. But the statement that they put out leads me to believe that they've connected this with Munro's personal statements from the past, showing that she's not necessarily going to escape from them, but this is going to be great currency to allow her to trade on in years to come, where she's going to really be able to play up that victim card and say, during Pride Month, the evil NSPCC dropped me, a trans woman, because of transphobia and a transphobic campaign. I'm wondering what she's going to get fired from next, to be quite honest, because, as I mentioned, this is a recurring theme with Munro. But apart from getting fired, she doesn't really do much. Bear in mind that she's from quite a well-off background. She needs as much oppression points as she can get. And if she can spin any of this as being anti-trans, you gotta bet that she will do so. So what are your thoughts on the stories that I've covered this week? Is there anything in particular I've missed off? Because I know that there's been quite a lot going on, but unfortunately, I can't quite cover everything. Just to let you know, this format's going to continue for the next few weeks at least. I've got quite a lot going on in my private life. I am going to be moving to my own flat, so these kinds of videos are the best way of kind of getting it forward, plus my Mac is on its last legs. And also a quick shout out to my friend the academic agent, whose follow-up to Unpopular Opinions Suitable for Advertisers begins tomorrow. You'll be sure to see me guesting on there in the next few weeks. The trailer for it is down below and I contributed a little bit to it. But thank you all so much for watching. I know this is going to sound a bit of a cheesy plug, but if you could like, subscribe, hit that notification button. Apparently if I mention all of these things, it kind of helps my videos get discovered. I would like to get a bigger audience. So thank you all again. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. And a special thank you to Kim, James, Sarah and the rest of my supporters on Patreon and Subscribestar.